many of the other blockchains are still trying to figure out the basics. Like, how do I scale beyond 100 transactions per second? You look at our roadmap, we take a different approach. We don't need to focus on many of these basic protocol features anymore because we've solved them a long time ago. And so our roadmap is really focused on the layer above it. What is needed to get to mainstream adoption? Stablecoins is the first true killer app of crypto because it has found kind of product market fit. Stablecoins are key to DeFi payments and they're critical to tokenization.
AI agents to request information and use each other. Doing specification at the moment is for Coinbase's X402, in which we're going to make Algorand as a potential offering when any of these agents or any other sort of domain outside of AI requests a payment to access a specific resource. Algorand comes as one of the options.
We tokenize gold, we tokenize silver, we tokenize solar panels, carbon credits, now water credits, equity. We were the first one actually to tokenize stock, like the Exodus stock, Algorand, and it's the first one ever to be tokenized. We're going to focus on kind of financial products because I think there's a massive opportunity, as kind of Paul Atkins also alluded to in his speech. There's a massive opportunity around tokenizing financial products.
Advancing our quantum security, we are going to build tools for us to be able to create post-quantum secure account. And this is just the first step.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the AllinCrypto podcast. I am your host, Rupert, and today I am delighted to be joined by not just one, but two members from the Algorand Foundation. We have a familiar face, Marc van Lerberg, the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer, back on the show. And we have a new face, hopefully to become a familiar face, Bruno Martins, the Algorand Foundation's Principal Architect. How are you both?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
The pleasure is all mine, and there's a hell of a lot going on with the cryptocurrency space broadly, and I want to start there. What are the vibes like at the Algorand Foundation with everything that we're seeing? You could perhaps link that to things we're seeing in the US, what we're seeing in Europe, more broadly, the overall acceptance of the crypto space as a whole. What are the vibes like with Algorand?
Yeah, so I think it's just a lot of excitement. I think we're getting more clarity from a regulatory point of view of how crypto should work, and clarity is everything, right? Like, as long as there's uncertainty and people don't know like what the right way is of doing things, it creates a bunch of like friction and issues. And so the fact that we're starting to see more clarity around these things, I think, is phenomenally important, very, very important. And so we can really like unleash the innovation really very quickly. So that's very, very exciting. Specifically with regards to Algorand, there's lots of excitement there as well. As you mentioned, we released a new roadmap, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more. We have so much kind of developer energy right now. We participated in like the world's largest hackathon last month with Bolt, and over 100,000 developers participated in that hackathon, and Algorand was the blockchain partner for Bolt, and so we saw a lot of interest and a lot of excitement about from developers like wanting to kind of move into crypto and understanding how crypto would work. And of course, Algorand is the easiest way to get into crypto, as we all know. We see new projects launching. We see like AI projects launching. We see prediction markets launching. So a lot of excitement around new projects. And so the community is super excited. It's growing fast. The sentiment is good. And so I would say in general, we're ready for alt season.
Wow, fantastic. Developers, right? And I know Algorand's put a hell of a lot of effort into AlgoKit. I've spoken about that on a number of occasions, in fact, with yourself, Marc. And it really seems that hard work seems to be coming to fruition. It really seems to be paying off. So massive congratulations. I also know Algorand's seen a hell of a lot in regards to a move towards being more decentralized. It's one of the most decentralized blockchains there is right now from a node point of view. In fact, we're running our own node. And have been really since the launch. Bruno, how are you finding everything at the moment?
Yeah, you touched on a very important point. So this whole technology started with the point of us removing highly trusted centralized entities. And we have a very particular topology in our network, and that was geared towards speed and some levels of decentralization, but we're taking that further now. And we're removing the importance. For those who don't know, Algorand has this, you can think of this a fast lane where everybody can connect to each other, but connect mostly to this fast lane for things to be propagated a little bit faster. Those all will, its importance will be reduced. So you no longer has to go to this fast lane. You can connect in a peer-to-peer fashion. And we think that's important. So anybody that uses these distributed systems, it shouldn't be forced to, their decisions shouldn't be made for them. If you want to connect in a peer-to-peer manner, you should be able to do so. And the network now is going to be fully arguably distributed and decentralized. Not only that, the foundation itself reduced the amount of stake that we had to participate in consensus. So we went from very high levels of stake concentration on our end, and once we released incentives, today we have a little bit over 20%. So we went from I think high 70s to now 20%. So we could be out of the picture, and the network will be fine.
No, and we all know that like the ultimate test of censorship resistance is being able to run a node at home,
Yep.
right, and participate in consensus. And so I think we're one of the very few blockchains out there that can achieve scale and still have node runners run their own, nodes from their laptops at home. And so that is something that I think we're very proud of. And so now with staking rewards, we've seen this since the beginning of the year, we've seen like a significant uptick in the number of node runners, over 2,000 now. And as I said, you could just run it from your home with like a mini PC for like $200 or something like that, and while still being super high performant and scalable. And that's the beauty of, as we all know, that's the beauty of Algorand's consensus mechanism.
I can attest to that absolutely. We are doing exactly that. We're doing it with or on the back end of a very low barrier to entry as far as costs concerned. But ultimately, this is all about inclusivity. Allowing everyone to take part in what is a network that I think is going to have far-reaching ramifications for the world as a whole. And it's exciting that anybody and everybody can take part. And you guys announced your roadmap, or dropped your roadmap, on the 31st of July. There's 4 main components to it, and we're going to explore different aspects to the roadmap, like enterprise adoption. We might even take a look at sort of quantum security. I know this is a big thing. BlackRock recently in their ETF filing actually added this in as a caveat, basically saying that any damage caused by quantum computing or loss of funds, they weren't responsible for. So this is obviously something that the industry is taking seriously. We know you guys are as well. Before we get into all that, let's maybe introduce the roadmap. Let's maybe give an overview of the roadmap. I know there's 4 sort of specific things that were spoken about, and there's sort of subheaders to that. Maybe I could ask you to give us a kind of overview of this roadmap.
So let me talk a little bit about our thought process for this roadmap. Like the thought, like when Algorand was created over 6 years ago, like the whole idea behind Algorand was that this is going to be a mature blockchain that's ready for real world scale. And so that's why, we, as I mentioned, through the consensus mechanism, we have the ability to be very decentralized. We scale significantly. We can do 10,000 transactions per second, and so we built all these features into Algorand core protocol, such as like native support for assets and instant finality and atomic swaps. All the things that that we felt were necessary to achieve real world scale. And I think we are at the point now where we can really push hard on that kind of mainstream adoption, especially also because the regulatory environment is becoming more friendly. And so I think this is the time to push hard. And so where other blockchains, it's very interesting when you look at the roadmap of other blockchains, many of the other blockchains are still trying to figure out the basics. Like, how do I scale beyond 100 transactions per second? How do I get my finality down from like 12 minutes or days or weeks to like something that's kind of more reasonable, right? So all of these, how do I not fork? Or like, so all the things that we have fixed a long time ago. And so when you look at our roadmap, we take a different approach. We don't need to focus on many of these basic protocol features anymore because we've solved them a long time ago. And so our roadmap is really focused on the layer above it, which is like, hey, let's get to mainstream adoption. What is needed to get to mainstream adoption? And so that's kind of how we thought about this. And so the roadmap has 4 pillars. And the first pillar we already touched on a little bit, right? It's which we still believe, and we are firmly in the camp of like Web3 OG values. We believe in the importance of decentralization. We believe in the importance of protocol sustainability. We believe in the importance of governance. And so we have a number of projects there that will basically achieve this and push the envelope further. The second big bucket is around kind of mainstream adoption. What in our view is holding back mainstream adoption is complexity. It's friction. And so our goal is to go and kill friction and kill complexity wherever we can find it, in the user experience, in the developer experience, but also in the business experience. When businesses want to go online, they also encounter a bunch of friction. So let's go after all of the friction points and just eliminate them one by one. That's kind of bucket number 2. Then bucket number 3 is there's a number of use cases that we think we should double down on because I think they have trillion-dollar opportunities. And so, of course, we are a general purpose blockchain, so anybody is welcome to come and like develop whatever they want in a very decentralized manner. But there's a couple of use cases where we think these are massive opportunities for which Algorand is really, really well placed to take advantage of them. And so we double down on them. And so that's around tokenization, specifically tokenization of financial products. It's around payments, specifically focused on agentic commerce, which we think is going to be a really big thing. And it's around identity and self-sovereign identity. So that's bucket number 3. And then bucket number 4 is around kind of the research area. Like our technology is really one of the best, I would say the best in crypto. We want to make sure it stays that way. And so we're doing investments in privacy, in quantum security, as you mentioned, and also in scalability of like creating a big step up from a scalability perspective. So that's how we think about this. Those are the 4 pillars: OG values, mainstream adoption, doubling down on a few use cases where we think there's massive opportunity, and then research.
Yeah, and we really did touch on the first one, or at least things that you guys have done in regards to network decentralization, on-chain governance, sort of economic sustainability. The nice thing is that you've not just sort of got to a kind of front position as far as the industry is concerned on all of these. You're actually planning on taking it further. And it's really nice to see that covered in the first kind of pillar of this roadmap. The second pillar, I think, is very symbiotic to where the cryptocurrency space is right now. And it's nice to see that you're driving the developer experience. You're continuing to do that with another release of the AlgoKit 4.0. Another one that the world is preparing for and about to embark on, and we're seeing this from a regulatory point of view, is enterprise readiness. How enterprise ready is Algorand, and what's your strategy there?
Yeah, so Algorand today is ready today for enterprise adoption at scale. Like very few networks can say that. As some might say you need layer 2 side chains. On a single layer today, in terms of scalability, enterprise could integrate and be live today. We have the throughput for it. But to make that journey easy, we want to remove friction. And the way to do that is to make that integration seamless. So we're releasing a few things. So one of them is Intermezzo. And Intermezzo you can think of, is a familiar system that enterprises already deploy in their own systems to do security of information and their assets. And Algorand, like most blockchains, the underpinnings is around cryptography. There is distinct keys related to these elliptic curves, strange things, but key management systems is what makes the security of our assets. It's true in distributed systems like a ledger, like Algorand, or in the traditional tech space. We are taking familiar infrastructure, wrapping it around, make it easy for the integrator like businesses, and have automatic access to Algorand accounts and give them all the access roles and policies that control the access to these keys because in our own organization, you might have 1,000 employees with different permissions and different keys. So we're making that experience very seamless in an integration method that they're known with. And the whole security of the custody of the keys that secures their information and assets is through a known piece of infrastructure that meets all their security compliance requirements, because it's used for in the tech space broadly, not just in the particular use case we're doing here for Algorand. So Intermezzo gives a seamless experience, a known experience for enterprises, and we add the integrate Algorand capability to that. We have an example, a demonstrable of this in the space already, as the first adopter Intermezzo, which is World Chess. If you guys are into chess today, you can log in to World Chess using your username and password for now. You can just log in, play chess, and you start getting reward with assets that you can use to redeem for prizes or to go up the ladder in the little system that they have. Those assets are issued in Algorand. And that custody is all managed by Intermezzo. It's good to release products when you already have a vehicle for them. So that's what we really try to strive for, is to release things when they can actually see it in action right away. And that's Intermezzo in the wild already.
And it's actually we call it kind of a Web 2.5 solution, right? Because if you're a chess player, you can just log into World Chess in the way you would normally do. You get your loyalty points for playing a game, for winning a game, for maintaining a streak. So you get the loyalty points, and you don't even know that the whole loyalty program is running on chain. And so it's completely abstracted away from the user. And so what Intermezzo also does, it basically also abstracts it away from the business, because the business, in this case World Chess, was able to build a fully custodial solution, right, without knowing much about the blockchain, and that's what Intermezzo is able to do. So it's I think in my view, the way we think to kind of mass adoption, I think it will be a gradual approach, and like Web 2.5 is very often kind of the first step to get people on chain without them even realizing it.
Yeah, this stuff needs to be easy to use, easy to adopt. If you look at technologies previously, and I know, Marc, you've played a role in some of this, these things, they need to be familiar. I always look at the example of PayPal. One reason they successfully kind of brought money into a more digital format, and the others perhaps didn't, that came before it, was due to that user experience, pretty much solely. And this is a common theme throughout technologies. Blockchain is no different. And I kind of think about Algorand as a bit of a Swiss Army knife. It can do everything, right? It's very multi-purpose in regards to what it's trying to do. And the example that you gave there, I think, is a brilliant one. There's also the kind of user experience that you guys are targeting in this roadmap. So we have the enterprise readiness, we have Intermezzo. User experience, you've got the Rocker wallet. Could we maybe explore that a little bit?
Yeah. So Rocker, you can think of a step 2 of Intermezzo, because we talk about custody, making enterprises doing custody on their own when they need it. Might be regulatory compliance reasons, or they want to do custody. But ultimately, we're on a distributed system, and we want to promote users to take control of their own assets. And Rocker is what enables this. And Rocker will be a white label solution for people to build wallets in which identity is at the core. And you can take custodies of assets. Let's say for the World Chess, they start with Intermezzo, they issue assets, reward you for playing chess. Eventually, they might offer, hey, if you download this app, we will call it the Chess Passport based on Rocker, you can log in with the pass key now instead of your username and password. The keys are managed the same way you manage the keys for your crypto. And now you take custody of your own assets. Not only that, we also help you manage your identity, where you can go from one chess platform to another, or to another digital space altogether, and carry the same identity that you built in one platform, or create any of them. Now, Rocker is going to be a standards-based design and implementation. We're not going to develop everything from scratch. So there are standardization bodies out there familiar to those who know the internet. For example, the browsers used to work every different. Today they work exactly the same because of similar work that is happening now in wallets. We are part of sponsor of the Open Wallet Foundation, which is part of the Links Foundation, and also we support the Decentralized Identity Foundation. They are aligning in terms of standards and reference implementations, how all wallets should work, regardless of the context. So we're adopting that, bringing that, put it in front of the user, a known experience to using just an application where identity is at its core, but we abstract away all the complexity. So in Web3, a lot of its immaturity gets shown in a lot of Web3 specific products where you almost have to go through an education process of how to use an application because it's too technical. You put it on the user the burden to understand cryptographic concepts and backup and security. And even though we want them to have custody, so it's a self-custody application, the experience hasn't been great. On-ramping new people is very difficult. So Rocka brings a standard approach. We add Algorand as the backbone and also adds the abstraction, not just of the technical aspects, but also the fee aspect of it. Today, in most Web3 projects, you have to know how to on-ramp, put your credit card, buy crypto or transfer crypto, and you pay your fees. Rocka is going to be designed to also incentivize the businesses and the applications you connect to they see fees, their business expenses, and they need to upsell the user in somehow if they offer value to the user. So the user itself will have a seamless experience. And in the case, they would just want to log in. I want to play chess. I want to own my assets, my identity, and then use Rocka or a chess passport app, for example, to take my identity to an in-person tournament, for example, in the context of chess, and prove who I am online, take my credentials with me that I own my identity, my data, my assets, and carry with me. So Rocka is going to be our first offering in the decentralized identity space. It's going to be self-custody, and it's going to be a white label, so everybody can fork and build.
Wow. I think this is one of the amazing things about this industry. You know, people are very focused on sort of financial applications, and there's definitely a crossover there with financial applications and kind of a digital identity or a crypto-enabled identity, a decentralized identity. It's amazing just how Web3 or crypto is solving real-world issues that exist on the internet. Like one thing you mentioned at the end there about giving your data back to you. We kind of gave that up with the internet, right? This movement is all about kind of taking it back, taking back control of it, taking back our kind of property on the internet, if you will, and then being able to sort of use that in a more complex way or a more useful way. And it very much sounds like the Rocka wallet is all about that. On top of a number of other things. Marc, I don't know if you've got anything you want to add.
Yeah, and while removing all the friction that's associated, which is the key thing here. Like if you think about this, like for instance, for financial use cases, how many times have you passed KYC? In crypto, it's like every single app has their own KYC process. It's just a disaster. And so, and then as a marketing person, you can actually see the drop off, right? When you actually do like typical end-to-end kind of measurements of like marketing campaigns, and you go through the different steps, and then you go like 90% rate, 90% progression, then KYC, you drop to 10%, like because like it's just a horrible process. And so just getting rid of that, like doing it once and then be done with it, right? That's the promise of decentralized identities and verifiable credentials. And so that's a massive friction point just by itself. Being able to get rid of your seed phrases and have it backed up through a social mechanism with DREG, another massive friction point that we need to get rid of, right? So there's so many friction points that we just have to tackle one by one, and that's the promise of Rocka. It's like we're rethinking what a wallet should look like just from the ground up, and taking a user first experience, a user first approach, and making sure you create an incredibly seamless experience that doesn't show you any of the crypto or blockchain complexities at all.
And no wallet connect. right,
And
Marc?
no wallet for
Because this is another aspect of this industry that signals the maturity is that we build these decentralized systems, and we are comfortable to have a middleman to control the flow of information. Rocco will use a peer-to-peer system to communicate between apps and wallets.
Wow. This is, groundbreaking stuff. I think I always think of a real world example, like, we have kind of physical IDs in the real world. And I remember once thinking it was a smart idea. I didn't want to take my passport out to get let into a club. So I thought I'll take a picture of it. And he very quickly said, look, we don't accept pictures because there's no way of us verifying that that's a real passport. If you think about maybe the real world implementation of these verifiable credentials, you might just have to scan something at a door and it will say, yeah, this guy's this old and this stuff's all verifiable and cryptographically secured. So it's a very interesting. This is the thing that I think it speaks to where the space is right now. We're moving to people actually going, yeah, this stuff is unbelievably useful, not just for creating an alternative currency system, for entirely rejuvenating the financial system, which we're going to get onto just now, but things that we do every day. And actually, there's so many benefits to this. And Algorand, I love to see that you've got loads of those benefits and really put them forward in your roadmap as a priority. So Paul Atkins at the SEC, total 180 in regards to current SEC kind of regulatory regime. Paul Atkins announced Project Crypto just the other day, and he said something to the tune of, we're entering a new era for our financial markets. We know that the Genius Act has passed. We know that countries around the world, in fact, we've even spoken with people that are working directly with central banks to evolve money and use distributed ledgers. They're all exploring the use of this technology, like what Algorand has, to upgrade the financial system. Let's maybe explore Algorand's play here, because point number 3, or pillar number 3, is, can a blockchain do that? And the first thing that you talk about is tokenized financial products. Let's maybe talk about stablecoins to begin with, and what Algorand's play is here.
So stablecoins, of course, stablecoins is the first true killer app of crypto, I think. I think everybody agrees with that. It is just taking off like crazy. And it's the killer app because it has found kind of product market fit, right? I think it's a much more flexible, if you think about USDC, for instance, it's a much more flexible way of transacting, of doing dollar transactions at very low cost. With instant, in the case of Algorand, with instant finality, with instant settlement when you do those transactions. And so stablecoins are key to DeFi because you want to kind of move in and out of positions like kind of in real time without doing on-ramping or off-ramping. Stablecoins are perfect to be able to do that. It's key to payments because the reality of the matter is when you do a payment from person A to person B, that payment is not going to happen mostly in native crypto assets, which are very volatile. People want to do payments in currencies that they understand, like the US dollar. And so stablecoins are critical to payments. And they're critical to tokenization because if you create a market for tokenized assets, going in and out of those tokenized assets, again, is going to be driven by stablecoins. And so stablecoins are critical to all of these things. And so from an Algorand perspective, the best place for stablecoins to live is really on Algorand because stablecoins don't require smart contracts. And that's just something that's uniquely Algorand. So we have this thing called ASAs, Algorand Standard Assets, which are basically our implementation of tokens. And these ASAs are primitives in the Algorand protocol itself. So in Ethereum or any kind of EVM-like chain, or Solana even too, if you want to create a token, you have to create a smart contract. And the token is kind of managed by a smart contract. In the case of Algorand, that's not the case. There's no smart contract needed. It's built into the system. And on top of that, it comes with the features that are required for compliance. Because obviously, if you talk about financial products, you talk about compliance. There's not going to be a world in which these financial products will just go gangbusters on a blockchain without any regulation. You're still going to have to do KYC and AML regulation. You need to have all these things in place. It so happens that ASAs have many of the compliance features baked in. So we can do whitelisting, we can do blacklisting, we can freeze accounts, we can do clawback. So all of the things that when Paul Atkins is talking about compliance, the importance of compliance, all these things are already available on Algorand as part of the normal token issuance. So there's no better chain to kind of issue these stablecoins on than Algorand for these reasons. And so, if you think about now what's our strategy in terms of like attracting more stablecoins? First of all, we have USDC on Algorand is kind of our primary stablecoin, the most successful stablecoin on Algorand. We were actually the first non-EVM chain that USDC launched on a while back. We have other stablecoins. We have a number of European stablecoins. EURD by Quantos is a stablecoin that's MiCAR compliant and that is specifically used in the context of payments. We have EuroQ and USDQ, also MiCAR compliant, also issued by Quantos, and so we expect more stablecoins to come to Algorand in the very near future. And so our focus is really to build out this whole ecosystem. Around there's a whole ecosystem being developed around stablecoins, right? Like the on ramps, the off ramps, the bridges, the transfer capabilities, the infrastructure players, the enablers, and so the market makers. And so this whole ecosystem, that's where we're focused on specifically from a business development perspective to make sure that that whole ecosystem can thrive on Algorand and we have the necessary integrations. And so Wormhole NTT is one that we announced recently that will allow you to transfer a token from any chain that Wormhole NTT supports to Algorand and back and forward. And so we'll see much more of those integrations happen in the next couple of months.
I think there's one. I spoke to an individual working with the Reserve Bank of Australia, and we kind of riffed this idea of an arms race as it relates to stable coins and potentially CBDCs. If you think about what the United States has announced and the dollar dominant strategy that they're going after, every country now has to basically fight back against that. Otherwise, they will lose monetary sovereignty or monetary dominance. So there's going to be a race, I think, and I think about this quite a lot in regards to other countries, and we see it, or the jurisdictions, the ECB's hurrying along with a lot of what they're doing. You mentioned Quantos. We've actually interviewed the CEO, great guy. And we know, of course, he was very fond of Algorand. I think there's this arms race underway in regards to people having to embrace this technology as it relates to money. Otherwise, they're going to lose out because someone else is going to offer a more efficient way of doing things. Is this something you sort of think about? And obviously, Algorand sounds positioned for it.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I think a lot of people like to hold dollars, right? And that has been the success of Tether, right? I think the Tether is very strong kind of in emerging markets where countries with high inflation, where people would prefer to hold their worth in something that is more stable than their local currencies. And so up until like before stablecoins, it was very hard for people to basically hold dollars, have access to dollars. And now with stablecoins, anybody in the world can basically get dollars very easily and manage them and transfer them and do whatever they want with them. And so that is what has been driving the success of Tether and stablecoins initially. And so yes, and so it's great from a dollar perspective, right? Because now you make the dollar more accessible to people around the world and still keep control over it. So I think that was kind of the first kind of step, if you want, towards stablecoin adoption. But I think now we're getting into kind of more of a second phase, which is what we talked about, is like how does stablecoins interface with a DeFi system? How does stablecoins interface and enable tokenization to happen, enables payments to happen? And I think that's kind of the next phase in my view. And that's from a roadmap perspective. We focus really on the tokenization aspect, tokenization of financial products, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And then also, how do we enable payments and agentic payments?
Yeah, agentic payments is a really interesting one because there's going to be a bit of a sort of picture that we have to paint in regards to the world that we're moving towards. I'm a big believer that you're going to have more financial transactions between machine to machine than you are human to human, right? It makes sense. We're automating everything. Why not that? Let's talk maybe a little bit about financial instruments. You mentioned all the compliance features that, this is the beautiful thing about Algorand, right? It was so well thought out. And you mentioned this right at the start. People are now running into problems that you guys solved 4 years ago, and when you listen to like Silvio, for example, talk about his vision for things a long time ago, a lot of that, a visionary truly. In regards to financial assets, real world assets and bringing them on chain, what are you guys seeing?
So specifically on financial products, we like there's a number of things you can tokenize. Like there's a wide variety of things that you can tokenize, and Algorand is probably the chain that has the most kind of like diverse range of assets that have been tokenized. We tokenize gold, we tokenize silver, we tokenize solar panels. We tokenize like carbon credits. Like there's a whole what we now water credits is a new thing that's coming up, which is super interesting. It's basically being tokenized on Algorand with a secondary market where people can exchange water credits. And so there's a whole variety of things that get tokenized. Equity, we were the first one actually to tokenize a stock, like the Exodus stock, publicly listed company, was tokenized on Algorand, is still tokenized on Algorand, and is the first one ever to be tokenized. So we were a leader and in real world assets, and we continued that path. And specifically, we're going to focus on kind of financial products because I think there's a massive opportunity, as kind of Paul Atkins also alluded to in his speech. There's a massive opportunity around tokenizing financial products, and so we're going to focus specifically on this. And what we want to do is take it beyond the standard kind of token approach, but actually try and model like contract-based financial products on chain. Like for instance, if you tokenize a debt product, you need to understand what is the debt, what are the attributes of this debt product. Like the smart contract that's associated with that debt product should understand maturity, should understand interest rate, should understand how long it lasts, should understand cash flows, and all of these things should be modeled on chain, so it's easy to create and automate all of the actions that are taken around a financial product. And that's what we're doing. And again, as Bruno mentioned, standards are really critical here. Like we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to go like blockchains are really good at creating their own standards and then calling it a standard, but it only works in your own chain. And so that's not how we're thinking about this. We're thinking about this more broadly. How can we adopt kind of generally understood and accepted standards? And so there's standards around this field as well. Actus is a company or an organization that is creating standards around how to tokenize these things. And so we're following their standards and implementing them on chain, and then make it easy for institutions to then adopt those and then deliver those on chain.
We're
And
quite
so we're
good.
going to start with, and the last point is so we're going to start with debt. The debt we call the debt ASA, which is basically a smart contract associated with an Algorand standard asset. So we're going to start with that. We're going to have an MVP of this out by the end of this year, and then we're going to move to equities next year.
And Algorand on equities, by the way, if you go and use some of the dashboards that kind of track real world assets, certainly financial assets, Algorand's number one as far as tokenized stocks is concerned, and that, of course, comes on the back end of Exodus. So I mean, that's a big thing, and I love your approach on that. There's a lot of people in the crypto space that kind of reintroduce the issue that we tried to move away from, and they end up siloing themselves with kind of their own standards. Well, you don't have the network of all these institutions, and actually, you need to adopt, if you want to use their products and tokenize them, their standards to do so. So I love Algorand's approach with that. Let's get on to a very interesting one, and that is agentic commerce. Now, some people might be going, what the hell is agentic commerce? Maybe we could explain that before we dive into what you guys are doing specifically.
Yeah, so in this space, and Marc, correct me if I'm wrong, because he's into this space, is that if we envision the world where we have this AI, today we have big LLMs and big models. They cost a lot to train. They're very expensive to run. But you envision the world where we have, instead of have these generic big models, it's totally conceivable. This is where a lot of people are talking, that there will be expert smaller models on particular domains, if I might need information from another model, obviously not going to do it for free. So there'll be a commerce for AI agents to request information and use each other. So how do you reward that work? So you could try to use a traditional system, the traditional rails for payments. But if you study a little bit these rails, you'll realize very quickly that there's a lot of hops through multiple parties, and everybody needs to get paid, and settlement times are horrific. And obviously, this seems to be a problem if you really want a very high throughput and a very agile agentic payment space. Distributed ledgers like Algorand in its network seems to be primed for this. Now, we do have a little competitive advantage over other ecosystems where we don't require multiple layers and very specific implementations, non-deterministic implementation of specific tokenization standards. Everything is supported already today at the protocol level to allow for these type of payments with finality, so you can integrate, read with trust at zero risk, proceed with business without considering if might be a fork, will I lose on the trade? And so we are doing work to integrate the right AI specific protocols. Again, we're not reinventing the wheel. We could totally come up and say we invented our own way of doing payments specific for AI. As you could clearly tell from this podcast, that's not our motto these days. We're adopting what's out there and what makes sense. And so A2A is a standard that we're looking into it. MCP, so most of the crowd has heard about MCP to share context between AI agents. And in terms of specific for payments, there's multiple of them, but the first one we're looking at, and we're doing specification at the moment, is for Coinbase's X402, in which we are going to make Algorand as a potential offering when any of these agents or any other sort of domain outside of AI requests a payment to access a specific resource. Algorand comes as one of the options that the clients can pay with. So we're going to do all this work. You could expect specifications very soon, and then throughout the rest of the year, we'll start the implementation, and we'll hopefully, then there's up to Coinbase to also bring it in-house and support Algorand, and hopefully it's one of the options.
And so our approach here also, and this is kind of more general approach with everything in the roadmap, is to actually work closely with our ecosystem on the delivery of it. We think like ultimately we shouldn't carry all the burden of delivering everything on this roadmap. So we're actively opening this up to projects in our ecosystem, and we'll have a grant-based system associated with it. So we actually help pay for some of the work that people in our ecosystem can do. And so a lot of work in this area has already been done. Like for instance, Go Plausible, one of our core projects in Algorand, has actually already built an Algorand MCP server. And so we don't have to do that because it's already built. And so we're going to figure out more ways to kind of integrate work that people in our ecosystem are doing and integrate it into the roadmap so that we can move faster and also figure out a way to kind of work more collaboratively with our ecosystem.
I love that Algorand's kind of unlocking entire new economies, machine-to-machine economies. You know, we get into the world of IoT that actually wouldn't have been possible likely without distributed ledgers. Because if you were to make those payments on traditional rails, it would just be unfeasible. Certainly, you talk about micropayments and things like this, and it's really good to see that in the roadmap. That was something that kind of lit my eyes up.
Yeah, and the other thing that's interesting here that people may notice is there's like coherency between like the different aspects of this roadmap. Like to give you an example of agents, for instance, like one of the big issues with agents is, what's the reputation of an agent? How can you trust an agent? Like, how do you make sure the agent, does what it says on the tin and doesn't go wild and do other things, right? And so agents need IDs, and these IDs will be stored on chain. And then not only do they need IDs, they need a trust model behind it, right? So because it's not because you have a decentralized ID that therefore you can trust the agent. It needs to be the trust model behind it. So it links back to decentralized identifiers. It links back to everything that we discussed around identity. And so these things are all coherent with each other. They all kind of fit together like Legos.
Taking us into the future. It's amazing the unlock that crypto brings to the table. And it's really nice to see Algorand addressing all of that in a multi-tonged approach. Some people are just working on one aspect of this. It's nice to see that the things that you guys are doing and laid out in the roadmap, it's all sort of complementary and moving us towards a more digital age, a more sort of self-sovereign, secure age. And talking about security, I'd mentioned that BlackRock in their ETF filing had basically put in the clause about quantum computing. And if there was any issues as a result of quantum computing in regards to a loss of wealth on the back end of those Bitcoin ETFs, they wouldn't be liable. They've put that clause in, sort of preparing for the future. You guys are
It's
also
because they're
preparing.
not yet tokenizing. It's because they're not yet tokenizing on Algorand. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had to put this in.
This is it. And you guys are also preparing for that future. Let's maybe talk about the threat that quantum computing poses to the crypto space broadly, and then we'll look at how you guys are preparing for this.
Yeah, so this is a real threat. I'm quite surprised to hear that about BlackRock, because I mean, even though quantum computers are not, I mean, feasibly, they cannot, as we know, they cannot break some of the encryption and signature schemes that today we use, but everybody understands that this is a real threat. So people should be starting preparing now, not wait until it happens. So traditionally, most of the cryptography we use today, and particularly in blockchains, we use mostly elliptic curves. And there is what's called a trapdoor function, which you know a secret and you can move forwards to find some public information, but you cannot move backwards. While in a elliptic curve space, without getting too technical, there is a specific algorithm that is theoretical, but we don't have the means to compute, to execute it, to reverse that operation, while it's called the Schnorr's algorithm, while quantum computers have enough computing power to do exactly that. And that is the threat. If it's a quantum computer comes online, it can do those operations, then all our cryptography, most of it, it gets vulnerable. There are some that might be okay, hashing functions, but for the most part, blockchains and traditional systems, it's not just a problem for our industry, it's for the whole digital world is at risk.
I always say that. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
People always focus on Bitcoin in regards to, or crypto in regards to quantum computing. What about your bank? What about your Snap, you know, whatever it may be? The world's in trouble, right? And crypto can actually help with this further afield.
Yes, exactly. And we should be very worried. And I think most of the big players are already doing strides in this. We see Apple coming up with post-quantum signature schemes. They're not widely used, but we want to be ahead. And we are already sort of ahead. So today, our state proofs, which is what guarantees the history of the chain, we already use a different system that is not based on these elliptic curves. It uses lattices, uses a signature scheme called Falcon to do that. So that bit is already quantum secure. But there's many aspects of these systems, in Algorand in particular, that use cryptography in different places. And so we have to pick where we start making those steps. And so part of the roadmap is us doing exactly that, advancing our quantum security. And we're going to do research and build tools for us to be able to create post-quantum secure accounts. Today, most systems, Bitcoin, Ethereum, still rely on our public keys. We see our addresses, our Algorand addresses, our Ethereum, Bitcoin addresses. They're basically a representation of a public key. This public information, this is the recipient address. This is the information that we're going to change in order to make our accounts, you can think of as a bank account, quantum secure. There's very specific steps to do this. We know exactly how to get there. We're going to reuse the same signature scheme that we use for our state proofs. We're going to build tooling to offer developers the ability to create private keys and public keys in the same way developers do today when they develop in blockchain. They're just going to be a lot larger, like 10 times larger. That creates other sort of problems, but enables us to create post-quantum secure accounts based on Falcon, based on Lattice. And this is just the first step. And so we are committed to this, and we consider this a real threat. We already had, but we're going to continue making strides in the.
Fantastic. Really nice to see. You know, I certainly think it's a threat. In fact, you know, I dabble in the financial markets. It's very interesting to see a lot of quantum computing stocks actually start to show some signs of life. I always think that's interesting because when you see things happening financially, you know, people sort of covet their money probably more so than they do anything really. So, you know, it's quite interesting to see people, big players, perhaps taking positions on quantum computing stocks. It could be an inkling of what's to come. And you guys, of course, are preparing for that future. This is a great roadmap. This is a really, really ambitious, well thought out roadmap, just like some of the other Algorand roadmaps have been. You've got everything in there from looking after the users, evolving their internet experience, their Web3 experience, their Web 2.5 experience, to enterprise adoption, to decentralization, keeping those core values, to quantum computing, to even scalability, going beyond your 10,000 transactions per second with perhaps parallel pipelines. In the next 12 months, it's going to be a hard question to answer because it's hard to kind of predict what's going to happen 3 months down the line in the cryptocurrency space, right? In the next 12 months, where do you see Algorand, perhaps intertwine how you see the world as it relates to cryptocurrency space and how you see Algorand in that world in the next sort of 12 months, a year from now?
So I think from a broader market perspective, I couldn't be kind of more bullish than it couldn't be more bullish. I think I think we will see a massive unlock of new innovation in the space, driven by regulatory clarity, and I think that is super exciting. I think also we see a lot of innovation that I think is going to come back to the US because of the regulatory clarity, and we could talk about that, but we are actually also planning as a foundation to move back to the US. Stacy already announced this, and so we are moving in that direction. So I think we'll see a massive unlock in innovation. And then as this happens, Algorand is the best blockchain out there to do this. We have the base technology, the protocol that has been proven for over 6 years. We have never gone down in not for a single second, right? We have all of the features required for real world adoption. We are kind of, with the roadmap, we're attacking all the friction points that exist and doubling down on the use cases that are $1 trillion use cases. And so we are in the best possible position to take advantage of this influx in opportunities and in innovation. And so I couldn't be more excited. I think we are doubling down on real world adoption, massive increase in adoption. We are so active on all these different fronts, from a technology perspective, from a business development perspective. We briefly touched on developers. We just completed this massive hackathon. We have 5 more hackathons, believe it or not, 5 more hackathons kind of lined up. In September, we have accelerator programs, incubator programs for developers and builders. We're launching a big new kind of marketing campaign in September to show users what the experience on Algorand looks like, and the vast kind of availability of projects and cool things you can do on Algorand. So that's kicking off in September. So we are firing on all cylinders, and so we couldn't be more excited.
Fantastic. Bruno, what's your take in the next sort of 12 months?
Yeah, so for me, summarize the spirit of the roadmap is removing friction and a standards-based approach in which the connectivity to the digital world in an easier manner, easier to integrate, easier to use, it is the goal. But there is another one topic on the roadmap that maybe we didn't touch, but I'll just hint about, which I'm very close to me, which is privacy. We're going to do a lot of work in privacy because that means protecting the user. So today, if you make a payment to me through your bank account, I don't know, I cannot probe how much you have and what you've been doing. So besides removing friction, making Algorand easy to use, a standards-based approach, protecting the user in a way that is compliant with all the regulation, it is sort of a goal. And I would like to see that more talked about and asked for. Personally, I think it's really important, and I wanted the next 12 months to expand on some of the work that we started with Algo Plonk, for example, to come up with solutions. And hopefully the ecosystem also buys into this and wants to maybe build payment solutions or personal storage solutions in which privacy, it is the forefront to protect its users. Because without privacy, I think a lot gets vulnerable and destroys a little bit of the trust we look to build here.
Well, it sounds like you've both got an exceptionally busy 12 months ahead of you. There's so much going on in this roadmap. There's so much going on in the space broadly. It's going to be an exciting 12 months, that's for sure. The last thing for me to do is thank you both sincerely for coming on the show. When this roadmap dropped, I was inundated with questions. Hopefully, we've cleared quite a lot of them up. And I can't wait to have you guys back on to talk to us about how all of this has gone. So, Marc, Bruno, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rupert.